We're here today to talk to you about what to do if CPS takes away your kids. I'm attorney Allison Tilton, a family law attorney and owner of the Gray Legal Group. I'm joined by Traci Williams, a parenting coach and owner of A Loving Way to Parent, and Robin Johnson, a criminal defense attorney and owner of the Law Office of Robin Johnson. The information contained in this video is going to be a lot of legal advice, so we have to give you a disclaimer. The information contained is for general purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice for your particular situation. If you need legal advice, you need to retain an attorney to discuss the facts of your case. So with that out of the way, let's get started. So Robin, the first thing that we want to discuss today is what are my rights as a parent if CPS has come in and taken away my kids?
Well, unfortunately, you do not have that many rights because CPS takes over the parental obligations. You know, they make medical appointments, they decide what school the kids go to, they just have all the control and all the power. It's really hard for parents to relinquish their power to CPS, to the court, to the government, but you have to. The more you cooperate, the sooner you'll get your kids back. These cases can go on for years. In fact, if a child is under 2 years old, they have to make permanent plans for the child by the time the child's 2. If the child, and they make it within 6 months, actually. If the child is older, they want to make a permanent plan by a year, but they can extend that. So you need to look forward to a lot of court hearings and a lot of orders being given to you by the social workers.
Sounds like a pretty tough position to be in. So what could a parent do when their time with the kids is limited or just completely stopped by CPS?
Well, for one thing, they need to cooperate with CPS with that too. If CPS tells them to not promise them anything, such as they're going to come home soon, they can't do that. That's used against the parents in this kind of situation. Traci has a lot to add.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. It makes it so hard because you are limited in what you can say. And you are limited in your promises simply because you don't know what's going to happen. So you want to make sure you're not promising something you can't deliver. You want to make sure that you're not creating more anxiety for the kids. So your focus isn't to go in and feel better yourself. Your focus is to go in when you do get to see them, when you do get to have conversations. Your focus is to look at how can I support my kids? How can I make them feel okay? They're not going to really feel okay, but as best as possible in the circumstances that they're in. How can I reassure them of my love and that I'm working on things and that they're safe and that things are going to be okay? Those are the things that the kids need to know. They need to know that mom and dad have things under control on their end and that this will be resolved. We don't want to be complaining to our kids. They will probably, I think, stop the visits if you do something like that, but it also brings anxiety onto the kids, and that's definitely not what we want. If for some reason you're not allowed to see the kids, because sometimes, I know with COVID that was an issue, but sometimes you're not seeing the kids in person. And I've heard of families that have been able to maybe drop off care packages and stuff. That's not always available. If you can't do something like that, I recommend writing letters to your kids when you're missing them, when you're thinking about them, when you want to say I love you and you can't. Putting something documented in a letter and then keeping those letters, because later when you do get them back, it will be nice to have some like history of what you were doing and how much you cared about them, what you were thinking, your heart that you couldn't share with them in the moment. And you might not share it with them if they're young. You're not going to share that necessarily with them right then. But these things impact kids long term. There's abandonment issues. There's, just the fear that anyone could come into your house. That stuff is going to potentially haunt kids and haunt parents. So having those documented letters, that's good for your kids later if they have questions. Now you're able to say, hey, this is what I was feeling. This is what I was wanting to accomplish. This is what I wanted to say to you, that I was thinking about you. I didn't abandon you. But you can't always go back and say what was happening back, 2 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. If you write it down, you can go back and say, hey, let's look through this, and this will tell you exactly what I was going through at that time.
That's a good idea, but again, only if the social worker allows the parent to send letters. And just like the visits with the kids are usually supervised by a social worker or someone that they designate, any letters sent to the kids are also going to be opened by a social worker or a foster parent or someone. You don't have free rein to your kids when social services takes them away. You can just work on going through the programs you're supposed to go to, parenting classes, drug testing and classes, whatever else they want you to do.
And on those letters, I may not have even said keeping those letters. So not necessarily mailing them, because the kids may or may not get them, but they also aren't going to really understand. You're creating almost a history for later.
And it can be cathartic for the person writing the letter too.
Exactly. You're going to be able to express things. You're going to be able to share your love with your kids. You'll get it all out, and your kids will receive that at some point. And you may never read those letters to your kids. You may just go through and read them to yourself to get reacquainted with what you were feeling at that time, and then share something when you get your kids back. It's hard to say what you'll do with them, the circumstances, but you definitely want to get those feelings out. And you definitely, I believe that our kids know that we love them when we're putting that stuff out there into the world in general. And so I do highly recommend doing something of that nature.
That's such a great tip. Right. I think that's just documenting things is so helpful. And it gives the parents the choice as to whether or not they're ever going to share this. So that's wonderful. And Robin, just if a parent does have a CPS hearing, do they need to have a lawyer for this kind of hearing?
There are lots of hearings when CPS is involved. The first one is 3 days after they take the kids away. That's an emergency detention hearing. The parent will be assigned a public defender. Each parent gets his own public defender, and a public defender is appointed for either all the children or just one child. But normally all the children are represented by either 1 or 2 or 3 different attorneys. So there's a lot of attorneys involved in these hearings. You can hire a private attorney. I do this. An advantage would be you can talk to me right when something is happening instead of waiting for you to go to court 3 days later. And the social services have already been to your house a few times and taken the kids, and you'll find out who your public defender is, and then, try to be able to talk to them at length. It's not always that easy. But you aren't facing the government yourself. You will have either a hired attorney or a public defender to help you. You can't do it yourself. And hopefully any attorney you have will advise you to cooperate with social worker.
Yeah, it seems to be such an important theme, cooperation. So thank you so much, both of you, for sharing such valuable information with us. If you're looking for additional information, you can find some at Temecula Valley Family Resource Network.com, or you can reach out to Traci directly at 951-240-1407 or alovingway.com, or Robin can be reached at 951-676-1962 or sharklawyer.net. Again, thank you both so much for sharing such wonderful information with us today.
Thank you, Allison.